The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Wednesday.
Hump Day.
In the Riv.
The day after the Clowncil meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And the day after the president gave our SOTU address.
Yeah, we're going to get into that one later because I got a lot to say about that. I can tell you that much.
I'm sure you do.
That fiasco.
Well, I just thought it was very interesting that last night the City Council finally, they must be watching our show.
Yeah.
Because they're finally talking about the CPA money not being used for general maintenance. That it's not the city's piggy bank.
Wow. It's only been used since its inception for that.
Right.
And they finally figured it out. Maybe after the millionth time we said it, they finally actually paid attention.
And they sent it back to the mayor requesting that he take the money out of the reserve account or out of some other accounts. Now, the thing is that Sean Kadim, and people like him, people don't like him, I think it's irrelevant. But what I do think is the fact that he keeps bringing up the numbers and he's proving that we have the money. We're sitting on $500,000 for infrastructure repairs. And we're not touching it. We're not using it for anything.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is he's brought up the numbers and nobody pays attention. He also brought up the fact that we didn't need a debt exclusion for the high school.
Right.
And that's one of the problems we have. Our school committee and our school committee kind of keeps a low profile. But when you get at the city council, sometimes you hear some really good debate that brings up some very good points, and then they just completely don't do anything about it. Well, that's one of the problems. It's like Congress.
Yep.
When they talk about pharmaceutical cost control, and they had those hearings a year or two ago, and look what's happened. Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, the costs are again escalating to the point where they're talking about it again. But that's one of the problems. Too much talk, not enough action.
Right. Well, what was very interesting was the fact that, Sean Kadim was asking for information. And, of course, what did Kathy Ann and Mary Sahadi say? I don't know. It's always And then Kathy Ann Rivera said, well, you didn't tell us you wanted this for this meeting. It was on the agenda. And then Sean Kadim said, it's on the agenda. Assume that those questions are going to be asked if the item's on the agenda.
Well, don't they get paid to know that?
Well, I don't know.
Don't they? Isn't that their job?
Well,
they're in charge. With the
amount of stipends that have been given away, I don't know if
it's their job, and they get a stipend for every little thing they do over and above breathing in City Hall. I think their base pay is just for being in City Hall, taking up space, and then everything else, any minuscule amount of work they do, they get a stipend for. Well, this is one of the problems. This is one of the problems we have in this city and in all levels of government, that we have these hacks in these jobs, and they won't give you an answer because that's why they're afraid of a forensic audit, because they'd all be in jail if we did a forensic audit. The reality is that they're getting paid to know. They're getting paid to have the answers. Oh, woe is me. I remember the time when Bob Connors was the city administrator, and when he went down to the city council, he was absolutely expected to have an answer. He was well prepared, and I virtually never saw him without an answer. Sometimes he gave answers that weren't 100% accurate, but he gave you an answer. And I'll tell you what.
You mean he didn't say, I don't know?
Look, I don't know. The stuff is in my office. You didn't tell me you want. Oh, now we have to send them a specific list. Talk about politicians. It's like the politician who wants to come on and have you give him all the questions beforehand so they can look great. And, this is all, it's all BS. They're supposed to have the answers. Kadim was right. They will write to send it. The CPA was not designed for that. The CPA does not belong in Fall River. We're paying enough damn taxes in this city. We don't need to subsidize properties. Let whoever owns the property take care of their property, and if the city owns it, let them maintain it, because it's in the ordinance that they're supposed to maintain the buildings. You know, we've got to pay for their years and years of neglect. They build something, they don't maintain it, and then we have to pay to rebuild because it's fallen into so much disrepair it has to be rebuilt. So forgive me if I am an avid opponent to the CPA, and I will do everything I can to get people not to vote it back.
Well, a lot of people, I got a phone call this morning from someone, a friend of both of ours, not Patrick.
A friend, not Patrick, okay.
He's a contractor in the city, and he was talking about the CPA with me. And it was talking about Paul Coogan's show, which, by the way, Paul Coogan's show has had an amazing amount of views. People are watching it right and left, so
yeah,
it's always good to know that people are watching our show that way. But he said the CPA's got to go.
Oh, and he's right.
And so many people say the CPA's got to go.
And it's ironic you brought it up, because I've had calls from our viewers, and I had a call from some of our friends, and one of them said, "Well, you should have asked him, what are you going to do?" I said, "No, that's not what our intent was. We actually, I believe what we did was we want to show these people and who they are. Let them reveal their personality, because that's a big part of being a leader,
right,
and a candidate. And the first show is to not allow them not to be, quote unquote, under the gun, to feel like they're, oh, you got to answer this question and answer that question and answer this question. No. They're going to be on here more than once. We're going to look at that's why at the end of the show, we said, examine their web pages, see what their position papers are, and then come back with specific questions. We will ask them questions. We will expect them to delve deeply into various positions. But their first foray on the show, we're not going to lead them by the hand or be anything. We want them to be themselves. Let you, the audience, and the voters of Fall River, see these people reacting in a state where it's not a politically induced persona. Because that's what happens. Once you stick them, it's bad enough they're here, they're running for mayor, and they're going to have a persona that they're trying to cultivate. But I feel that this giving them ample time to answer questions, being a little bit informal, will allow you to see the kind of personalities they have and to judge them and get a feel for them. And now you can look at their position papers based on what they said. Then we come back and ask specific questions. But I got a lot of positive feedback. I had people commenting on their opinion overall of Paul Coogan's demeanor, the way the way he handled it. And as I said, this is what we want. We want you to look at the person, not from just this soundbite debate kind of forum thing. We want you to look at the individual, see him in a semi-relaxed state. And that's what our intent was. And I think, based on the fact, as you said, we're getting a lot of views, I think it's a good thing. And you don't have to worry about CJ and I asking questions at the next go-round, because that's what we do. And we will ask them any specifics you have on their platforms. That's why we said at the end of the show, make sure you go on their websites and read their positions. And when we have the show, we will have their position papers in front of us. So,
and as a matter of fact, on Friday, we have Kyle Riley coming on board.
Don't forget. And it will be the same format for Kyle. We're not going to go, well, give me, and start grilling him. It's going to be, okay, this is your time to have 20 to 25 minutes to show everybody who you are personally, to show everybody, as I said, your plan, Why do you think that you should, what is going to allow you to turn Fall River around and let them basically approach it from make generalizations first, then deal with the specifics later. If they want to, and remember, we did give Paul the opportunity to delve into specifics. We said, look, if you want to address any of these allegations being made against you, you can, and that option will be given to everyone. And we do have Kyle Riley, please tune in Friday. And also, following week, we are going to have Erica Scott Pacheco. Is that?
Should be on a week Friday.
A week Friday.
Yep.
And so, look, and then we'll get them on again. And obviously, the door, even though we invited them and they never got back to us, I feel so slighted. But, but Jazel Correa, the second, our mayor, is not coming on the show. And Joe Camara has chosen not to get back to us. And, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's their loss because, we don't want a soundbite. We don't want a soundbite. We want to have an in-depth examination, give them time. And I will be perfectly, and you can call me on it if we do anything differently. If we come on, we're not going to do anything different with Jazel. We're going to give him the time. And if he wants to have a 25-minute infomercial, which he's really good at, we may never speak again after I introduce him.
Right.
He may have a 20-minute press conference on this show. If that's what he chooses to do on his first visit to the show, that's exactly what he'll get.
And we're treating everyone the same.
That's right.
We're treating everyone the same, so...
And that's exactly what he'll get. If he wants to talk for 25 minutes, and that's what I told one of the people I was debating. Look, if Paul Coogan wanted to talk 25 minutes straight, and he had this giant dossier of things he wanted to, we would have let him do it. And the same thing, if Jason wants to come on and give a pep rally or an infomercial, okay. But on the second show, there will be questions. So,
of course
but hey, that's the way it is.
Yep. Well, somebody reminded me, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled today. Remember the Michelle Carter case?
Yep.
The girl that was sentenced to prison because of the texting suicide? The Supreme Judicial Court upheld it, so she's going to jail now. She's been out awaiting the outcome of the appeal, but they've upheld it. So she's going to go do 15 months.
Well, I mean...
So be careful what you text people. Because now,
look, people can say what they want, but there have to be consequences for their actions, and you are responsible if you are complicit in someone doing something like that. And that's my opinion. And you can disagree, but the only thing I can say now is I got the Supreme Court on my side because they agreed with my position. So, okay, I'm not going to try to rub it in, but I am.
I'm not going to rub it in, but I'm going right in.
That's it. I'm giving it a little bit more salt in that wound.
That's it.
No, as I said, you can disagree, and you have a right to. You have, it's an opinion. My opinion always has been about everything that there are consequences for your actions. I came up in an era where if you did something wrong, you got punished. They didn't get you a psychiatrist and make the rules easier for you. It was not like it is today. So, forgive me if I feel that creates a more productive individual when you realize that your actions have consequences.
But they suffered a trauma when they were 3 years old.
That's right. Yeah, they didn't get their pudding immediately
exactly.
after dinner.
But it's interesting because last night's council meeting was just so off the wall. We had to mention the
and it's nice to see. I'm going to segue into one of these. Nice to see that our new what is this official title here? Housing, whatever the hell it is. As minimum housing director, Faust Fiore explained. Looking for investors looking to rehab properties. Florida is now, quote, the place, unquote. Nice work, Faust. That's what we want. We want them to come in and rehab the properties. But I'm going to give you a little hint, Faust. I wouldn't be too optimistic about this succeeding. It's amazing how Fall River always tries everything that fails in other communities.
Well, interestingly enough, he's had this position for a while and nothing's happened.
I know, but just remember one thing. I got to get this in right at the outset, the get-go. In Detroit, to try to rejuvenate and resurrect Detroit, they were selling properties for $1. You could buy a house for $1. as long as you bought it in Detroit in one of the rundown neighborhoods. And guess what? That didn't work too well. So again, Fall River's going to try to get these things to rehab. And if anybody does come to rehab, it will probably be what they vilify all the time, the absentee landlords. They'll come in and throw a couple of pieces of paneling and sheetrock up, and they'll rent them, and then they'll just collect rents and have no investment in the city. That's not what these programs are designed to do, but that's what they ultimately end up in most cases. And again, that's just my opinion.
Well,
So-
they're saying that the housing market in Greater Boston is the reason why these properties are now being sought out by people down here in the Fall, by people coming down the Fall River area. But when you look at some areas, Fiore points to the city's Corky Row Historic District as one such example. Several years ago, he said it was a home to one of the largest concentrations of vacant and abandoned properties. It was also listed in the 2016 housing study by UMass as being Fall River's most blighted neighborhood. Now, Fiore estimates that 6 of those once problematic buildings are being simultaneously renovated by different investors.
Yeah,
6.
operative word, investors.
Right.
Not individuals buying them to live in the property.
Exactly.
So what are they going to end up? And 6 units. How many units are in Corky Row?
Phew, don't even ask me.
Yeah, exactly. I remember a 4th of July in Corky Row when they set fire to 3 deckers that were occupied at the time and put tires over the hydrant and set fire to him so he couldn't hook up when they threw bricks and bottles at us. So you're not going to tell me about the Corky Row neighborhood. And again, let's recruit people when you make a statement like, well, they called for a pizza when a pizza delivery guy got there. They beat the crap out of him, stole the pizza so they didn't have to pay him. Yeah, of course. Yeah, tell that to people who actually want to live in the property. When you try to get these properties rehabbed, you try to get people in who are invested in the property. One of the greatest strengths Fall River always had was the immigrant population. When they came in and they bought a building, 3 deckers, because they could have their family live in them. They were invested in the community. They were meticulously maintained. Who doesn't remember that when Portuguese immigrants, or whatever immigrant they were at the time, but Portuguese are the greatest influx in this community in the last 100 years, when they bought property in this, you could always tell they put up, they meticulously maintained the properties.
Yep,
They were invested in the community. Now we get 3 investors, or 2 investors, rehabbing 6 units to see how much money they can get out of it. And do they care anything about the city? No, they don't care. It's the people who are committed to the city that matter. Not that I have anything against absentee landlords, because there are some people who own a lot of property in Fall River and are well invested in their properties. They care about their tenants, they maintain their properties well, and they live in the area. But believe me, when I was on a job, I saw a lot of poorly maintained properties, and most of them were from absentee landlords who had no ties to Fall River.
Yeah, well,
And they were allowed, they let those properties go. And King Philip Mill was the greatest, because they had the 2 Chinese brothers that owned that, Ping and Pong, or, whatever their name was, I can't remember. But every time we went there and there was a problem, Ping would say, I don't know anything. Pong knows that. Wait till he comes back. And then when Pong got here, he'd say Ping knew it. And guess what?
nobody knew anything.
Nobody knew anything, and the building stayed derelict no matter how many times we wrote it up. And so
It was a party house.
Forgive me if this is a little too naive and Pollyannish for me to believe, especially based on the fact that I was in these places. Remember, I had to respond to problems in these buildings for nearly 39 years. I knew who maintained their properties and who didn't maintain. I dealt with landlords who had real concerns for their property, and I dealt with ones who didn't give a flying you-know-what.
Yep.
about it. So forgive me if I believe this is another attempt to attach Fall River to another something that's already been proven to be not very effective.
And look who's running this program, a waiter.
A waiter. Yeah.
A waiter. Somebody who's totally unqualified for this job.
Yeah.
This was given to him as a political favor, and he's milking it for everything he can get.
And another BS proposal that won't work is on the front page of the paper. That's how bad. That's how desperate it's getting in Fall River. That we're taking something that they tried in Detroit, that they've been trying for years here. It doesn't work, especially in communities. Look, if you're telling people you're going to give them a deal on a house to rehab in Newton, there'll be a line 65 miles long to get that property. There are no deals on those properties. Go to the affluent cities, the cities that are making money, the cities that are thriving. Where do you find these programs? In places where nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to be. And the investors who come here, that's who they deal with. They deal with the people in those apartments, and they have no ties. They're not like people who own property in Fall River, used to grow up in Fall River, and now maybe live in Somerset or Swansea. But they own property, and they are committed to their property, because I've dealt with those people. We had problems with a fire alarm system or a broken pipe. We'd call, the landlord would be there within a half an hour. And they would make every attempt to straighten it out. I've dealt with both ends of the spectrum. I dealt with the landlord that we called and they never showed up, but we actually had to summons them to court to get them to fix the problems in the property. We had to adjudicate the thing. So, you know, I'm not speaking from theory, people. I'm speaking from experience. I've been there. I've seen both ends. I've seen the landlords that care, and I've seen the landlords that don't give a crap.
I think there was a song that said something like that. I've seen life from both sides now.
That's right, yeah.
Win or lose, but still somehow.
That's it. And what else? We got...
I think we can talk about Stowe, State of the Union.
Oh, yeah, well...
So too.
Oh, yeah, the State of the Union. And I'll tell you what, I don't even want to, in a way, CJ, I don't even want to talk about it because, you know, there's a lot of politics there. But you know what? I'm going to just tell you what disturbed me. Then we can get into political... You know what disturbs me? When I see Second World War veterans being introduced, and I see these politicians look like they got crazy glue in their chairs. Actually, Ocasio-Cortez, somebody actually leaned over and told it, maybe you should stand up. This guy is responsible for you having a country. And she grudgingly got up. They planted their butts in the seats when they introduced ICE agents who rescued people from slavery, child slavery, and sex trafficking, and put their lives on the line every day to make a political statement. That is absolute BS. I don't care if you disagree with anything. You want to make this country open borders for what? So you can get elected all the time? You proved to me last night, you pack of nincompoops, that you don't care about the people. You're there to represent all the people, not just the people of your ethnicity. You're there to represent everybody. The only time they got up, and to me it was nauseating, when they were talking about them. Oh, we've got all these new women in the, and they all got up and they're high-fiving each other. Oh, it was wonderful. They're talking about them. That's their agenda, them, and their constituency. And you know something? That's not what America was supposed to be about. You know what they used to call America before you got here? A melting pot. We were supposed to come from anywhere in the world and then become Americans. When Theodore Roosevelt talked about there's no hyphenated American, and some of the greatest Americans he knew were naturalized. Everybody's grandparents came to this country got the crappy jobs, worked like dogs to get their children a better lot in life. And every generation it got better. There were signs saying no Irishmen or dogs allowed in the bars, but the Irish prevailed. The same prejudices were made against every other ethnic group, the Italians, the Portuguese, everybody that came to this country. And they overcame it by assimilating into the society. But you people want to have your own country within this country. That's not what this country was created for. We were all supposed to be the same people. That's what Theodore Roosevelt's point was when he said there's no such thing as a hyphenated American. When you get here, you're an American, and that's what you should want to be. You can be proud of your ethnic heritage, but if you like where you came from so much that you want to make where you live that country, go back to your own country. Because that's where you belong. If you're an American, you're an American first. Those men that stood up last night and stormed the beaches at Normandy, they didn't care what nationality the guy next to him was. They were fighting to protect the world from being overtaken by a madman who did exactly what you're doing. He believed only his ethnicity should survive. Everybody else didn't count to Adolf Hitler. Oh God, I just did it. I mentioned Hitler. But guess what? All these socialists really aren't socialists in my opinion. And remember, it's just my opinion. But as far as I'm concerned, they're fascists. And congratulations to the president to say that this country will not be socialist, even though Ocasio-Cortez is adamant about making this country into socialist. Well, if you think socialism's so great, go over to Russia and try to get a loaf of bread.
Look at Venezuela.
Look at Venezuela. Yeah, and if you and the other one who was called the president an MF, try to go to any Muslim country and say what you said about the Ayatollah or the person in charge and see how long you get to live. The greatest thing in this country is people like you get to talk, even though what you say is reprehensible. You're you're like the American Nazi Party. They got a right to say what they want. But you think you're socialists? You know, you're doing exactly what Adolf Hitler did. You're separating people. He categorized people by their religion, by their ethnicity, and where they came from, and he tried to exterminate them.
Well, and, you know, on that note, you know, one of the concentration camp survivors,
Yep.
his family was loaded on a train.
Yep.
And they thought for sure that was it. And then the train came to a screeching halt. And the family was prepared to die right there. They expected the worst. The doors opened, and what did they say? It's the Americans. It's the Americans. They didn't say it's the Italians. They didn't say it's the Parisians. They didn't say it was the Spanish, the French, or the Turkish. They said it's the Americans.
Yeah.
But we're no good.
No, well, that's what I say. You got to be an American, and like I said, you can be proud of your ethnicity. And for those who will say, no, that's not true. We want to bring everybody in. We want to be all inclusive. That's crap. You want to be all inclusive till you get you in power, and then when you get in power, look at what you're doing. Look at who elected you. They elected you because of who you were, not what you do. And remember what Nehemiah said about the Holocaust. You'll be all inclusive until you get the power, and then gradually you will not include everybody. You will be like Nehemiah, what he said. First they came for the trade unions, and I said nothing. Then they came for the Catholics, and I said nothing. And when they came for me, there was no one left to speak. You are to me the antithesis of what this nation is all about. I don't care what color you wear to the State of the Union address. Your behavior in not standing up for people who are heroes and who are fighting the fight every day, whether it be on the border or fought the fight for this nation in our wars, and disrespecting them, I've got no use for you.
We'll see you on Friday with Kyle Riley. Please be sure to tune in. We can't wait to see you. Stay angry, everyone.